Another update on the Bitcoin situation here, as far as what's going on Germany. This one caught my eye as to how these Bitcoin are actually being dispersed. It looks like there's almost an equal offset to the amount of Bitcoin being sold by Germany as being scooped up by the US BTC ETFs. So, kind of reviewing this post, it seems like it's almost equivalent. So, our thought that this looks like Germany fumbling the bag, and shockingly, the price has stabilized somewhere near 55, 56,000, which I've seen other reports say that that's almost exactly where the predicted price was supposed to be. So I think this one's kind of interesting. Lucas, have you had a chance to check up on this at all?
I did see that. We saw Germany sell, and I don't know if you have the number for the amount that they sold yesterday, but I thought it was a record amount, a daily record amount for how much they sold. So people's predictions that Germany was going to stop selling their Bitcoin, I think, are going to continue to be proven untrue, that they're going to liquidate probably all of their Bitcoin. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that they're being soaked up by private companies who are looking to financialize the trust in Bitcoin. It's
I think this was the number that I saw, 17,000.
Unloaded 17,000. Wow. How much is 17? That's
Well, remember they had something on the order of 50,000. So this is substantial. That's like a third.
yeah,
So they're almost out. Pretty soon they'll be gone.
yeah.
So
Well,
they've traded their they've traded their cow for a handful of magic beans. We'll see if they get
they
a beanstalk out of those euros that they traded for.
I think it's they've bartered their races for love and for laces. The That's Cat Ballou, by the way. I don't know if anybody's watched Cat Ballou. There's there was all this one of these German, a member of their parliament, had created some sort of stir about we need to hold on to Bitcoin. I don't think they're not going to hold on to their Bitcoin. The United States is probably not going to hold on to its Bitcoin. Whether or not
Well, I don't know about that. I would disagree with that one. If Trump gets in, which again it still seems likely, his talk of strategic reserve asset to me says that they're pointing in that direction. And actually, that is a good lead into the other thing we wanted to mention, which was that we have a political party here that seems to be wholesale embracing crypto in a very substantive way. So, like this is kind of interesting, that we've got the Republican Party platform actually writing in stuff about mining and crypto and this other stuff related to digital currencies. So I don't know. That's a counterpoint to what you just said.
Yeah, but Trump is there was Trump can talk about the idea of using Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, but in reality, he's very limited as to implementing that policy. He controls the money that is given to the office of the president, but he doesn't control the treasury. That is in the hands of especially the House of Representatives. So I think
so talk about that more, because I don't fully understand that. So we have all this Bitcoin, meaning we, like the US government, like whatever, they seized all this Silk Road assets, right? So how does that actually work mechanically? Like, so if they want to sell that, was there a bill that was recently put through that said, the US is going to sell a certain amount of Bitcoin? Like, tell us how that works, because I don't 100% understand that.
Well, the Department of Justice and the U.S. Marshals are not originally part of the Constitution, but the Constitution
So that
sets.
means that they're part of the executive branch, then, right?
They are agencies that have been created under the office of the executive. Yes, but at the same
Right,
time,
because in general, it's like there are only certain enumerated parts of the U.S. government, right? And anything that isn't strictly part of that has largely been what part of the executive branch and falls under ultimately the purview of the president, right?
well, that's where we're seeing a great shift in with the re- with the cancellation of Chevron deference. Yeah, I would say also that curiously enough, the many of these programs have been funded by by the discretionary budget given to the office of the president. But at the same time, Congress is still in control of that money that is given out. And perhaps they were established at a time whenever the executive was aligned with Congress, but the money still must flow from Congress, from the Treasury, and not only that, but the Constitution bars the federal government from
But
from.
this isn't money, right? So isn't this where it falls under something kind of weird? Because this technically is what, like some kind of weird asset according to the definitions of the
Well,
U.S. government, right? Because it's not money, right?
I mean, the Constitution bars the states from creating their own currencies, and it says that the United States is limited in its specie. And when we talk about holding Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, like I don't even know that, like, if we could what the legality of the strategic oil reserve is.
Okay, but we have their strategic oil reserve, so we're doing something. They've got to be thinking about it in the same way, right? So regardless of if things are technically true, we definitely have some amount of, well, it's the way that things are being done and have been done, and so I don't know, we at least have momentum for things that have happened in the past.
Well, momentum, but the momentum seems to be going against the federal government holding anything apart from gold or silver. And maybe the
So,
narrative.
so that's part of Chevron. So like the fact that like they can't do that kind of stuff is that's Chevron there. Is that how that's interpreted?
Well, more so. I mean, remember that we saw Thomas Massey put forth a bill to end the Fed and to get the
And then quickly thereafter, his wife mysteriously dies.
no, his wife had long had and been fighting a battle with cancer.
Oh wait, so is that clarified? Because I thought that there was some rumbling that like she'd been offed by the
No,
deep state.
that was people who didn't follow Thomas Massey, weren't aware of the situation with his wife that had been going on for quite some time. His wife, his wife, his wife passed away from cancer, and that had been something that she had been having treated for quite some time. So, God rest her soul. The Thomas
Yeah,
Massey.
and I don't mean to make light of that either. So it's I apologize if I had uncouthly said anything disparaging because I feel for anybody that loses a loved one, obviously.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that we addressed it because I haven't, out of respect, those who know haven't said anything, and there has been a whole lot of jumping to conclusions. The internet is the place of jumping to conclusions. So, but
Interesting fact, not kind of to make light of cancer or to glorify it at all, but just interesting fact about myself that I can inject along the topic. When I was in the Marine Corps, my stepmom became terminal with lung cancer, and I went back to take care of her while she passed away, and that was the reason I did not go to the Iraqi war. I was stationed in California at the time, and I was slotted to be deployed about a month and a half away from the Iraqi war, the invasion, and I decided to turn back and help out my stepmom through a Red Cross message, and ended up going to Japan twice instead.
Wow. And what do you think? Not to change too many subjects here, we were on the Fed, but let's, while you bring that up, Rusty, when you look at the Iraq war and things that you've learned since we invaded Iraq and tried to establish a democracy there, in the wake of maybe weapons of mass destruction and the yellow cake, the yellow cake debacle in Nigeria, what do you what do you think about that arc in your life?
I still think that it was important for the reasons I chose to go, and that I knew something was going to happen. I do think that there is a lot bigger picture behind the scenes when you think about who really has the power in the world and the reasons for why things are happening, and the reasons for why things do occur and go a certain way. And I think that there is a bigger picture that I was not really fully knowledgeable about when I was that young and eager and willing to just join at the time. But I still, am happy with my choice. I think it was the right choice, and I would make the choice again with my mindset and my ideas of what the idea was going to be with the war, and that there was actually going to be a repercussion from 9/11, and something was going to happen, and that was a major instance in my life and a major happening in the world, and something like that wasn't just going to happen and then not have a reaction or repercussion. That something like that was going to happen and then have a life-changing event for the entire world, and it kind of has. And whether that's deep state or big government, the way we think of right after 9/11's, when they took into the acts where they can really dig into people's personal lives, and the Freedom of Information Act and all that stuff that they started to really tackle down on in the internet, and really trying to control all of that. And I think that there's a lot bigger picture that it goes into, but at the ground level, there's still people that need to go out there and be on the front line doing the action that's taken. And whether you believe it's the right action or not, it's the action that needs to be taken. And in every war and every conflict, there's a right person, there's a wrong person, and it just depends on that person's perspective. Like, you can talk to half of the world out there, and the United States is a negative kind of economy, and is not something that's positive. The only really great thing about being an American is being in America if you can enjoy it sometimes. Like, all the world doesn't really see America as that great, and we kind of just hold power over them. And I've been watching a lot of the History Channel and old reenactments of Rome, and I've been starting to think to myself a lot of the comparisons between ancient Rome and what has become the United States, especially when you were talking about with the IMF and how it is pegged to the United States currency, and how could there be any way of coming off of that? I think of, Rome was so powerful that Rome ended up falling. And the way that Rome fell is, they say, oh, it's to the barbarians, to the barbarians. But when you actually look at the terminology of what was a barbarian, it's just whoever was not Roman or Greece. Like, everybody was a barbarian. And so that you can almost put that terminology into, we have America, and then the rest of the world is barbarian. And when you talk about that first world, second world, third world economy and banking system, it kind of puts that into light. You have the first world, kind of economy that we have, and everybody else is the barbarians trying to get to that.
When I hear barbarian, I often think of at least Genghis Khan and the Mongol political setup there. Because they thought that the classified system of Europe was wrong, reproachable.
Classified, you mean that there were classes like nobility?
Absolutely. And even, I mean, Rome, because to me, the greatest arc of measuring the rise and fall of Rome is the delving out of citizenship, and the
to really nerd out here, Lucas, I got to ask you a question quick before you go too far on this one. Have you read Polybius, the Histories? Have you had a chance to read that book?
No, I have not.
So this was it's one of the oldest historical books that was ever written. It was intended to chronicle the rise of the Roman Empire, and I believe it's written in Greek, and it says at the beginning of the book, to set out to explain the rise of Rome, you got to start back a little bit further. And so it sets out to say, well, you know, what was going on before Rome started. And it's one of the coolest books I've ever had a chance to read, Polybius, the Histories.
I'll look into it. I have read a couple of histories of Rome, and again, to me, none explicitly from the vantage of the delving out of Roman citizenship. But it seems to me that, you know, we talk about like inflation of money, and in the time of Rome, there was, you know, the greatest thing that they had for sale was actually citizenship to be a Roman. And you see increasingly them opening the door to let more and more people into the noble class in Rome.
Reminds me of the Roman Catholic Church selling indulgences.
Absolutely, and the selling of indulgences. I mean, you know, there's another great book, and some people don't like him, but he's brilliant, and it certainly was in the first of his books. He was maybe a little bit wrong later, but Francis Fukuyama wrote The Origins of Political Order, and he takes a look at the Roman Catholic Church and other religions from a sort of a vantage of understanding how they work for solving political conflict. And it's I would say his understanding was that Rome moved to Christianity because of, and also the like a Christianity as opposed to Judaism, because with Christianity came this notion of like a monotheistic religion, but with sort of three, and pay attention to how the Catholic Church, as opposed to the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church and the Reformed Church and the millennial churches all pay tribute to the triune God, the many-faceted God, which is interesting to say. You know, Francis Fukuyama says that in the book he lays out, he says, you know, we have this narrative of the history of man as a caveman come from cave fighting, and that was not how it was in reality. Prehistoric man lived very communally and were mammals, and the political phenomenon of religion comes after a long time of using ancestors to solve political conflicts. You know, you have a fight with your neighbor, and before you go and kill them, you say, "Oh, we had a great grandfather. Our grandfather is watching over us. Our grandfather would not want us to do this. Let's solve this in some other way." And as that becomes more abstracted, you have these notions of gods. Anyway, I don't know how I got off on.
Well, we got there by you'd mentioned the triune Christian God.
Oh, you mentioned indulgences. And I also, you know, there's an old mystic, a German mystic, because when I think of money, I think that money is...
Name drop it and I'll link it up. We'll put them on screen.
Oh, Hildegard of Bingen. Hildegard of Bingen. And she said that God is a mirror in the sky that we look through when we cannot see ourselves in others. And I think about money as being a mirror in the sky that is broken up and little shards.
Is this the right one?
That's Hildegard of Bingen. De Bingen. I like the "de" a little more, but yeah, Hildegard of Bingen. She was an old German mystic, very fascinating woman. God is a mirror in the sky that we look through when we cannot see ourselves in others. And you think about like how money works. We have this notion of you know, gold or silver or greenbacks or Bitcoin, and you give something to some of it to somebody, and they do what you want. And before we relied so much on money, we had gods, and we would go and worship a narrative. And if somebody was in your church, an old lady in your church needed her yard mowed, you go mow her yard. If you don't go to church and somebody needs their yard mowed, you go and say, "Will you give me $20 and I'll mow your yard?" It's a religion of sorts. But yeah, indulgences were a way of creating money, I don't know. I think about indulgences a lot. We also have this narrative that the native peoples had wampum, and that was a blue rock that they would go around and pick up on the ground, and that it was scarce. No, in reality, it was the religious.
Well, Lucas, I'm reminded by this quote. I wasn't sure if this was on your mind, but when you were talking about mowing somebody's lawn, I was reminded of this quote from Matthew, where he says, "If any man will sue thee at law, also take away thy coat, let him also have thy cloak also." This one right here. I don't know. That kind of came to mind. I don't know if that was what was on your mind or not.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I call Christianity the notion of giving up to get. And so I think that is a great summation of it. And I make the Catholic Church and the Christian Church for quite some time, had done away with the notion of, it's weird to see millenarianism springing up so much of the Old Testament, when for a while there was really this notion of, and going back to especially the Roman alliance with the Christian Church of getting away from the law and from punishment, and using more subversive methods to get along with people. If they sue you for a cow, give them also the rest of the herd and your house, your coats, give them everything, and see if you haven't made a friend. Wampum, though, wampum was only gathered in times of mourning. And it's interesting to think of the...
well, wait, as long as we're quoting Bible verses, I got to throw this one in too. Just real on the quick, since you mentioned something about getting away from the law, that this again just came to mind.
Yeah, I think not that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets, but to fulfill.
So the problem here, Lucas, is I'm so well versed in this stuff that if we ever get on this topic, we'll just be, it'll almost be like a Bible study class. Not that I want our spaces to turn into this, but we've turned to some historical perspective on Christianity here somehow. But yeah.
I was listening to, and I don't shy away from religious conversations. I think they're very important to have. But I was listening to a lady who wrote a book about Judaism recently, and she said something that sort of took me aback. She said the important way to be looking at the Old Testament is not focusing on God or the four gods of the Old Testament, Yahweh, Elohim, and I forget what the other is. And she said, but focusing on the Jewish people.
Well, and the hard thing about it in the Old Testament is in a lot of translations, you won't even find any of those words. It's all just translated God. So you have to break out other sources and ways and means to actually figure out what's being said here.
And I also don't mind the topic of religion, just so both of you know. Another interesting fact about me is I'm a secretary for an established church. The ESP church is kind of like any kind of religion is an interesting religion kind of idea, and we just explore all types of thoughts in religion. And it's been established since about the 1970s, and they actually own 100-acre plus kind of like resort, not resort, but a place of worship over in California, right above San Diego, called Madre Grande.
Retreat? Is that the word you're looking for? A retreat?
Might be it's a piece of land that the church owns. It's about 100 acres, and they allow people to live on that land, and they basically grow off of that land, kind of like a hippie commune nation where they just all live and support themselves off of that land. And it's about 100 acres right above the Mexican border.
Compound. I think you're looking for the word compound.
Yeah, might be compound might be the word, but you know, compound kind of takes into thought a negative aspect of the religion. But you know, they own a spot of land, and they take care of it. They have a library and a large collection of spiritual and religious books on site, and you know, they have a lot of gardens and a lot of lakes on the property and stuff like that. And they just, you know, all live there, and yeah, I guess it could be a commune.
Well, I think it's also when you get to churches that have land, or you say compound, Grant. I've been very interested also, like in the advent of blockchain. Like what happens whenever we see churches that are using their own currency? Because
have churches been creating tokens? Is that a thing?
No, because there's
oh my God, there's an opportunity right there. You gotta bring that up with Aleph. Like that, that's the next thing right there.
I have brought it up with Aleph. It is.
I have thought about it through my connections with my ESP church and being the secretary and the treasury for them. Kind of thinking along the lines of would there be ways that people could donate to this through a crypto coin? But I'm not really knowledgeable enough on all the logistical laws of that, because I know like the property I live on is considered a religious site, and the laws and the taxes that my landlord pays are different because the house is considered, you know, a religious location for the church.
Well,
Lucas, what would be the tax and legal ramifications of that? Like, would it be a security if it's created by a church?
That's where it gets very fascinating. And I mean, we had notions of private money. We had a notion of order in which the states, at least the northeastern states, the original colonies, were bound to a religion. States were prohibited from creating currency. Was that prohibiting them from a religion so that they had private religions? I mean, to me, the most ideal forms of currency, because it is about money, is about faith. Money is about a narrative of history. Like whenever we start tying those in, tying ledgers, blockchains in with people of the same faith, it will become very powerful. Now, a couple of things. One, we talk about the standard accounting practices today. The standard accounting practices come to us from the Mormon Church. And in a time whenever John D. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan had accumulated most of the financial interests and assets in the United States, it was the one holdout that they could not penetrate was the Mormon Church. And the Secretary of the Treasury of the Mormon Church came to them and said, you guys play your own little games. You have your own little accounting narratives. You take advantage of other people, and it's not right. And we're not going to do business with you unless you come to the table and we have a discussion about what's fair with regards to finance. And that's where we get standard accounting principles today, to this day. That comes from Murray Rothbard, by the way. I don't know what you're pulling up there. The other thing that
Lucas, wait a minute. So you got to see this. Like, since we're talking about, we got to talk about this. This to me, I don't know how this came across my feed, but this is like a preacher like giving a blessing before NASCAR, and he's like saying, "We thank you for the Dodges, for the Fords, for the mighty machines." It's like this can't be real. This has got to be fake. Like, does this really happen? Did they give a blessing before NASCAR? Do they bless the cars like this?
I mean, why not?
I don't know, man. It's just wild. Like if you look at what they're saying here, it's
You
like,
know, they prayed a 6-month-old Jesus too, and 2.2 pound and everything.
Well, again, I talk all the time about the creation story of the native peoples, and the Popol Vuh is about a basketball game. And sports in a great way are not about competition, but like coming together to simulate a hunt, to have a shared experience.
right. If you think it's like the what's it called? We're talking about the Central American tribe that played the sports game, and then whoever won, they were sacrificed to the god. Is that the one we're talking about?
Well,
Or
like
Popol
even
Vuh?
again, and like going back to Christianity and Judaism, like a lot of it is about sacrifice. Like we have written out of our discussion in the world today, like what is sacrifice? What is it to give up something that you think is yours? And to me, sacrifice is always very, very interesting concept. You know, the Popol Vuh was the Mayan creation myth, and we see all of the ball courts in Central America, but not only in Central America. Think about lacrosse. Like, where did baseball come from? Where does basketball come from? Where do all of these ball sports that we play today come from? They come from the Americas. And it's also very important to remember that the Reformation that we see of the Catholic Church and the upending of that political order there comes after contact with the Americas. And it's Christopher Columbus on his first boat ride back from Haiti brought 60 native people back to the court of Ferdinand and Isabella. Many of them went on to the Vatican. The Iroquoian leaders, when Quintopec, one of the great speakers of the Iroquois, went to Rome for several years. Even we had a discussion about Squanto, which is not his real name. Squanto in the Thanksgiving story. Squanto had come back from Europe after living in Europe for 10, 15 years and being a journeyman in Europe, and came back to find that his tribe had died or been assimilated into other tribes. So like this whole narrative that we got to the United States and there was a revolution and we signed the Constitution, sort of erases 250 years of contact and exchanging ideas. For I desire mercy and sacrifice and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings.
No, well, I mean, you're talking about sacrifice, so I just know. Again, like I just got to keep firing these off, man. If we're gonna quote Bible verses, I'm just gonna throw them on the screen as they come up.
I mean, I'm a little bit wary of quoting Bible verses either, though, because they can be taken out of context very easily.
Yeah, but I know the context, so
Okay.
No worries.
Well, didn't Hosea marry a prostitute? Wasn't that part of the story of Hosea?
This is quoting Jesus here, man. What are you talking about?
I thought Hosea was from the Old Testament.
Yeah, but the thing is that the Bible says that this presages like things that would be said in the future, because if there's a triune God that pre-existed all things, then the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost are all one, and you can't take them in absentia; they all act together.
Well, okay. By the way, I put up one of my favorite religious books, which is a biography. You were talking about the Yahweh, Elohim, and Yeshiva, and I can't remember the fourth, but there's another name in there that is used that we obscure with just a concept of God. And God, a Biography is a great book by Jack Miles. He also does Jesus, a biography, and Muhammad, a biography. And goes through and sort of just dissects the, basically writes a biography of them. And I really enjoyed God, a Biography, because you see sort of a very paternal relationship between.
Here, let's see if we can sleuth this out from this list. I think a lot of the ones that you mentioned are here, right?
Yeah, there's Jehovah.
Damn pop-ups in the modern internet, man, they obscure what I'm trying to show.
Emmanuel. I don't know. There's I get again. Oh,
there's Yahweh right there, Elohim. You know, which one are you looking for? Which are you thinking of?
Well,
Adonai, that one comes up pretty often.
Adonai.
I'm butchering the pronunciation. My fault.
Well, we do say Aleph all the time instead of Aleph, but I do that out of because I first said Aleph, and
I think these are some of them, right? It's like this is some subset.
I don't know. I'd have to reread it. Just that there are different manifestations of God, and that it wasn't seen as one ubiquitous. I don't know. Just the narrative also of God like getting angry, like having a flood, and then saying, "Well, I'll never do that again." You think about that in terms of father with children. And it's interesting to look at that religious narrative and think about it in that term. But going back also, you know, the lady that I was listening to, I cannot remember her name. I think it was on Tyler Cowen, but she said that that one of the great the true great epiphany or change in religions that had sustained Judaism was the concept of forgiveness. And she said it's like one of the crucial points in that narrative is whenever Jacob forgives his brothers for selling him into slavery in Egypt, and that sort of restarts the narrative. So I thought that was fascinating, because I'm often thinking, you know, about forgiveness. Like I talk, like, even, you know, we talk about tyrants today. Cicero said that a tyrant is the forgiver of debts, and Salman P. Chase and the creators of the currency system that we had today thought that debt forgiveness would be crucial to the system. But part of the reason that we see an explosion in the money supply is because there's been no forgiveness of debts. And not only that, but like, think about how the relation between an expectation of who bears the loss has changed. There was a time in at least the United States.
There's got to be a Latin phrase for that, right? Who bears the loss? That sounds like a Latin phrase.
Maybe caveat. I don't know. So caveat emptor, caveat debtor. Who knows? I'm sure there is a Latin phrase for that, because. But I don't even like going back to Latin phrases again, because we were trying to start an adversarial system of justice, not a inquisitorial system of justice. But how quickly did we fall back to that inquisitorial system of justice? And not only that, but like this notion of using a language and using concepts that were foreign to most of the people who were under that system of justice. As the judiciary pats themselves on the back and says Marbury versus Madison was a great thing. We need Nathan back here. He'd probably be like, Lucas, don't you dare. Yeah, well, going back to debt, you know, who bears the loss today is a very interesting concept. Oh, you know, another great book that we don't mention enough. Did you ever read Debt by one of the founders of the 98% movement? Debt, 500 Years, McGregor. Are you familiar with that book? He really digs into this notion of who bears the loss, because it used to be fairly split evenly between the lender and the debtor, although the Bible says neither a borrower nor a lender be, oh sir, of biblical quotes.
But love one another. I gotta pull that quote up.
Well, I mean, think also about Muhammad Yusuf and I think a name that is forgotten in the narrative of blockchains and regenerating finance is Muhammad Yusuf and the concept of micro lending. And we have today things like GoFundMe and Lending Tree, etc. But part of the notion too was that you got to set the interest rates that you were loaning to your friends. And Muhammad Yusuf was an Indian, and he wanted to see micro lending in India to lift people out of poverty. And he said one day we will have to go to a museum to see poverty. I think he had some great ideas. But we've seen the middlemen sort of insert themselves into that, and you know, Muhammad Yusuf was thinking about, you know, what implications having a cell phone in your hand could bring. But there were other problems with the manipulation of that information being transmitted to the cell phones as well, we know. So thus we still have the banking system and pray for the intervention of blockchains. But you know, I mean, even also like I think is that
I think that neither a borrower nor a lender be. I'm not sure that's a biblical quote. I think that that one.
Then it's Shakespeare.
Yeah, I think it is Shakespeare. I think that, you know, in the history of the United States, I think it was very common that the only books that people had was a copy of the Bible and then some Shakespeare. So they oftentimes got very intertwined and put together.
Oh, it's from Hamlet. Damn it. See, this is the problem I get in with.
See, look at this, man. This is why we need fact checking like straight away in the debates. Like somebody says something and right here I'm furiously looking it up as you say things and I'm like, I'm not sure about that.
Well, but I mean, I don't know.
And then I even misquoted the thing that I was trying to quote, which is like that love one another thing. That's totally not in the right context either. So, you know, you each lose 1 point there.
Okay, well, one of my favorite verses is in my Father's house there are many rooms. I go to prepare a place for you. You know, I have an old Quaker house, so I really enjoy sort of Quaker concepts in that era of and you know, there was also this notion of getting away from, again, like having the Bible in a foreign language and having that interpreted to you by a priesthood.
Yeah, that's your buddy Martin Luther right there, right? He's saying that was, we wanted to get away from that.
I mean, actually, no. The Lollards, the Reformation was a complaint about those indulgences that you mentioned earlier, and it was a complaint about money. So. Apart, like separate from Martin Luther at the same time, and again, this is the Reformation is a great rethinking of political order from the Catholic Church, based on exposure to the native religion, the native political order here in the Americas, and so you had Lollards who were all about printing the Bible in the native tongue. Or translating the Bible, and would you double check me on that, Grant? I don't know if you're looking up Lollards right now. And then you have at the same time, you know, we have Quakers. Quakers come from England, Mennonites. We have like all these different religions that spring up in various countries of the Holy Roman Empire, or the former Holy Roman Empire. And they were all trying to start a political order in which the power came from below, not above.
I think I found this. Does this seem like?
Yep. John Wycliffe. So a mumbler. They couldn't say it correctly. I don't know. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of Lollards or reading double checking, but I'm pretty sure that the Lollards were those who were adamant about translating the Bible into the native tongue so that people could understand it, and it didn't have to be interpreted for them by a priestly class. Also, this notion of getting away from that class system, which, going back to Debt, also by David Graeber. That's who it is, David Graeber.
Not McGregor.
Not Matt Graeber, sorry. That was Ewan and the Pillow Book. David Graeber, and there's another David that was a co-author, but he's passed away. David Graeber is on Twitter. You can follow him if you care to. I laugh. He in his book about debt, one thing that he talks about in getting away from this like priestly class that interprets.
Is it this one, the first 5,000 years of debt?
Yep, that's it. It's fantastic.
This is a really cool way to put the cover art. Like it looks like a receipt that was printed, you know.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. And he starts the book out with a conversation with, I believe, an Australian woman that he had whenever he was on a book signing tour, and she says that, well, one must repay one's debt. And he had a book before this that I forget what the book before, also a great book, but you know, one must repay one's debt, and he got to thinking about that, and he thought, well, not everybody thinks that way, and I mean,
well, I think you know, some considerations of debt. It was that debt had to be forgiven after some number of years, and it was actually a relatively short period of time, wasn't it? Like 4 years or something like that.
I think it was 7 years. That gives us the concept of jubilee.
Right, the jubilee, and that actually resonates, I think, within our modern tax code, which is bankruptcy is like there's some 7-year lockout as well. I think that harkens to the jubilee.
I mean, and bankruptcy, I think, is a great American is part of. I think it's one of our better concepts that we have added to or enshrined in law. But now we've been whittling away at it, and so, you know, this, Grant, I've also brought up to you the notion of evaporating coins. You know, like we always talk about the monetary supply, well, like the Bitcoin has a fixed supply. Chia and other cryptos might have tailing emissions or some sort of all, you know, infinite addition of supply.
Well, okay, wait, let's stay on Jubilee for just a second. So here, I think, is the thing. I think, though, we're a little bit off in our remembrance of this, because I think it's saying that this is 50, maybe. Is that there's something about the law of slaves and being liberated in their 7th year of service or something like this, so that there was definitely a bound to things, and there was like official ways that debts were supposed to be canceled, so that, you know, you didn't have this enshrinement of slaves for all eternity. You weren't supposed to be, you know, debt slaves for all your life, which it seems like in our modern world that's more like what we've gotten to, debt slave for life.
Amen. And I mean, I mentioned earlier that the Orthodox Church, the difference between the Orthodox and the Catholic Church, one of those differences was this concept of how long debts could be carried. And are you familiar with the term Boxing Day? Boxing Day.
Just that it's some sort of a parallel to Christmas, as far as I know, in Australia. Boxing.
Boxing Day comes back from feudal times. You know, we also talk about slavery, but there are different types of slavery. And in the slavery of the United States was chattel slavery, in which a person could be bound to a person.
Well, we had multiple kinds, right? So like one way that people volunteered into slavery was indentured servitude to get their passage to the New World, right? Isn't that was one of the things?
Yes. And so I don't know what that would be, as slavery to a job, but that, like, think about Mexico and the Catholic Mexican order had the notion that you could be bound to a house and thus like the practitioners.
This is the Boxing Day that I'm familiar with. I don't know which one we're talking about here, but this one's the one that I think is what most people think about, right, on Boxing Day. Or have I got the wrong one here?
Well, Boxing Day. I don't know what etymology they're giving, but Boxing Day comes from serfdom, and it was this notion that that there had to be some amount of forgiveness of slavery in the Christian religion, and so Boxing Day was the day that serfs could pack up their things and move to a different feudal lord.
I don't know. You're gonna have to give me a link on that one. I can't find it, and that one is unfamiliar to me. Maybe it's an alternative spelling. Maybe you got to spell it like BAUX or something. That's not sure here.
Oh, let me look it up. Boxing.
Yep.
So
anyway, just while you're doing that, I want to actually make sure we cover the thing that we said we were going to cover here today. So we have some guests that are in the wings that will be coming shortly. So I've got a friend of mine that said he'd be willing to come on and talk about cannabis laws. So we've had a guest on the show who talked quite a bit about law, running for judge. That was Nathan Hansen. I thought that was an absolutely fascinating discussion. I really enjoyed it. And so this individual is going to come on and talk about some of the ways that cannabis laws have been written. And he's really knowledgeable about this. Some places have done really well writing these laws. California actually has fumbled a bit. There are some of the laws that were written in California that it's strange, and I don't know all the nuance. So hopefully he'll school us on this. But the way that they've set up the laws, producers are actually having somewhat of a hard time in California. So there's quite a bit of variation in the way that this has actually been rolled out between California, Colorado, and states that have more recently legalized cannabis and what they've done with it. So we'll have a good discussion about that. Lucas, you said you had a history professor that's going to come join us at some point. Is that in August, or what will that topic be about?
I haven't set a date, but a great history professor who wrote a biography of Oliver Wendell Holmes. Is that right? The Cross of Gold speech, the man who gave the Cross of Gold speech, and he wrote a biography of him. So I reached out, and he was very. He said he would very much enjoy having a conversation about the progressives, the bimetal, the fight over bimetallism, the gold and silver standard era, and a discussion with. Is it Oliver Wendell Holmes? We go off onto these religious this merry-go-round of religious characters, and all of a sudden I'm not sure that that's correct. I think it's Oliver Wendell Holmes. No, it's not Oliver Wendell Holmes. Who gave the Cross of Gold? William Jennings Bryan. See, it's these three these three letter names. He wrote a biography of William Jennings Bryan. So I haven't set a date for that, but he's very willing and excited to come on, and we will get him on, worked into the schedule soon.
All right. Well, that sounds like a really interesting one. And then I've also got the guy that organized Crypticon has agreed to come talk with us. I think we're going to do that one a little closer to the actual event in Minneapolis. We'll give him a chance to sort of talk about what's going on there closer when it's actually going to happen. I like covering pop culture stuff too. I mean, I think that's a fun thing that we can do on this show is we can talk about crypto, we can talk about ancient history, we can talk about all kinds of stuff, and it's sort of whatever we want to talk about. And I love the variety that we can just mention the things that we're super excited about and interested in. So this one should be fun to hear a bit more about, like, what's going on in the modern world, and then we also get a chance to hear about some more esoteric ancient stuff. So there'll be a variety of things that'll be coming up on the show as far as guests. I'm also going to try and line up a guest speaker, and this one I don't have confirmed yet, but I'm definitely thinking about it. He worked on some of the gun laws that have recently been passed with respect to suppressors in Minnesota, and just like how those laws were written and how these things have been enacted. So that one could be fun as well. I'll see if I can get that lined up.
Well, I can't find the exact site of when Boxing Day comes. I'm pretty sure it comes from the Russian Orthodox Church sometime in the 1550s as enforcing relief to people who were bound to the land. But I will find that. I'll send you the link after the show sometime, Grant, because I'm sure about it. But how curious, because if you'll notice in the Boxing Day here, it's some sort of notion of giving people both debt forgiveness and giving them a gift. But it's not quite the same relief, is it, as forgiving their debts or allowing them to pick up and leave?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know one thing that has not been allowed under U.S. bankruptcy law is student loan debt is not dischargeable under bankruptcy. Are you familiar with that?
That is interesting. It would be. I'm certainly familiar with the executive orders, that quote unquote have forgiven or paid off student debt and have been thrown back in the face of the executive. It's not that I don't believe in the forgiveness of debt or like think that. I mean, I think it would be a much better exertion of the authority of the executive to campaign for the inclusion of the forgiveness of student loans in a bankruptcy, but I haven't seen that. So no, great. I'd actually forgotten that student loans were not included in bankruptcy. And I guess the reason.
Oh, wait a minute now. It looks like maybe things have changed a bit. I know that was the state of things, but here's an article that was just from last year seeming to update this. So we may need to look into this a bit more. You know, actually, Nathan, who was on previously, has worked in this area quite a bit. So really, if we wanted to dive into this with some detail, we could certainly get him back on and he could tell us all about bankruptcy, what's dischargeable, what's not, and the current state of affairs with this stuff. But you know, it's something we might want to look into offline.
You know, I definitely want to look into it. Let's put that on our list of things to cover in more detail in the future. Because I'll also take that chance to bring up the history of Boxing Day and of serfdom. And I'm pretty sure it comes to us from Russia and the Orthodox Church, but couldn't find it exactly. But I think that's also so very important because in the narrative of, I don't know, world history, we also leave out the relationship of debt and religion, and especially the Orthodox Church, which I think is an important thing to bear in mind, especially in our fraught current times. By the way, did you see Viktor Orban met with Vladimir Putin? Viktor Orban, now the president of the European Union.
No, I didn't catch that one.
He did, and he said that he found Vladimir Putin to be reasonable and thought that he could find some sort of peace. I don't remember all the words, but keep your eye.
No, I think I saw some other peace overtures from Putin talking about Trump's plan or something to that effect. Didn't we see that?
Well, I mean, there's a great interview with Jeffrey Sachs that brings forth a narrative that we're not necessarily getting from the White House or Congress or a lot of elected officials, but that I think is a truer narrative with regards to, you know, diplomacy the way of the world. And I think that Putin is not. I think Putin has a point with regards to the fact that whenever we created NATO, we said that we would never add Ukraine to NATO, and for several times said that we would not increase the size of NATO. I think if we backed off.
And didn't Biden just recently say, "I'm the guy that expanded NATO"? Did you see that quote, like where he said that?
Biden says so many things that I just. There's a reason he uses a teleprompter for private engagements among fundraisers, because he also, makes all sorts of claims that are outside of the powers of the executive, like I forgave student debt. But to go back to NATO, Jeffrey Sachs also made the point that. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, they abandoned the Warsaw Pact, and it might have been the correct thing to do to get rid of NATO. I mean, we already have concepts like the UN that are about increasing bonds through a democratic process than one that's defense, because I think that we've seen this notion of defense very quickly can turn into offense. It's also why I think it's important to call the War Department, not the State Department, because they sure seem to be war hawks. But you now on the end of the hour, you've drawn me into my polemics.
Well, I mean, it's our show, Lucas. If you wanna go a bit longer, I've got a few more minutes, but if we want to call it a wrap, that's fine too. We can definitely get into more detail tomorrow if you're so inspired.
But let's put it off for another day, because I don't have much to say beyond that, unless you want to dig into. I figured everybody was watching Viktor Orban and what was going on with Putin, and
I don't think so. I mean, it certainly hasn't come across my feed, so probably.
Well, we'll put it on. I don't know about tomorrow or how that works, but I can go into.
Yeah, let's look at it tomorrow. I think it's fine. It's probably news some that there's various world leaders meeting and talking about it, and especially if it counter to the consistent narrative that's been produced that Putin is some kind of crazy person. Well, it's always interesting to hear a different take. But I'm kind of reminded of what happened when what's his name, the big host went and did the interview with Putin, and he started off by giving a history lesson.
Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson got the history lesson starting.
I love that interview. I listened to that whole thing.
Well, I haven't. I'll listen to the Putin interview with Tucker Carlson. I didn't listen to it, but I love international politics, so let's talk about it tomorrow, because I've been dismayed at the path that we've taken with regards to Russia.
Okay, that's our show for tomorrow then. So if you're interested in this topic, we'll be diving into it in more detail. Let's look at some of these world leaders talking about Putin and how that's a counter narrative. So we've got at least 3 people who have said this so far, and we're just kind of scratching the surface on it. I'm no Putin apologist here or anything like that. I'm not saying one thing or the other, but we're going to review it. So we'll see what's being said by various world leaders.
We will address the cursed word appeasement, because that's the what gets lobbed at the likes of Viktor Orban or anybody who's seeking peace. So yeah, we will. And Germany's not very happy about Viktor Orban either, but more on that tomorrow. So enjoyed it today. A fun talk. We started all sorts of concepts, religion and blockchain. I think maybe that was my favorite part. But guys, I enjoyed it. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.